changed my whole life by understanding neuroscience and scripture. I used to have severe anxiety, depression, OCD tendencies. I was super overweight, almost 300 pounds. I procrastinated. I had addictions. All I knew was survival mode and self-sabotage. And I was struggling with this even after I got saved, because even though I left Egypt, Egypt still lived in me. Now, I'm the healthiest I've ever been. I'm 90 pounds down. I'm financially free. I haven't worked a regular job in over 2 years. My relationships are all healthy. I married my best friend. My mental health is intact. God grew my platform to over 100,000 followers. I can go on and on, but all of these things changed because I realized that all the things that I was going through, all the cycles that I was in, wasn't just a spiritual battle, they were neurological patterns. And if these things can be wired into me, they can also be rewired. The thing is that the process to be rewired is long, is messy, it's uncomfortable, and it's definitely not linear. This is why it took the Israelites 40 years instead of 11 days in order to get to the promised land. And remember, Egypt represents trauma and bondage, the wilderness season represents the sanctification and rewiring process, and the promised land represents the true embodiment of freedom and authenticity in God. Anyways, here's everything that I learned so far about renewing your mind, body, and spirit with scripture and science. I have my notes ready. So number 1 is your brain is wired for safety, not growth. Your brain does not moralize your decisions or your lifestyle or your habits. It doesn't care if something is toxic or holy. The only thing that it cares about is keeping you safe. And for the brain, safety is not a matter of if something is good for you or bad for you. It's just a matter of being familiar. Your brain is wired to work on autopilot and with the least amount of resistance and friction. And because in order to step into your new life, you have to literally build a new pathway from scratch. Like, I'm talking about literal pathways. Your neural pathways, yeah, it's literally like building a bridge from scratch. Your brain doesn't want to do all of that work. It wants to literally just continue on the path that it already knows, that's familiar, and that has been working this whole time, even if those things are not good for you. Which brings me to my next point, where you can retrain your brain to find safety in growth. And in order to retrain your brain to find safety and growth, you have to expose it to new experiences. The thing is that it's not just about exposing yourself to new experiences. You have to actually be intentional and conscious when you are in those new experiences. When you try new things or try to pick up a new habit or try to do anything that aligns with this new version of yourself you want to build, you have to be mindful and you have to learn how to be present. Meaning, when you try something new, don't just try something new. Literally take mental notes. Literally tell yourself, you see, it wasn't that bad. We're safe. You see, try to do it in small increments so you don't overwhelm yourself. That way, your brain can store it in the mental files as safety. Like, all right, this activity was actually not so bad, and maybe we can continue trying again tomorrow. It's literally like training a toddler. My next point that I learned is that trauma doesn't just live in your mind, it actually lives in your body. What your mind has forgotten about or has distracted itself from, or whatever the case may be, your body remembers. And when it's not addressed, these things can turn into illnesses, chronic fatigueness, anxiety, autoimmune disease, like all of these things. You might constantly be in fight or flight. And if these things are stored in your body, that means it's also important to take care of your body as well and listen to it. I do speak more about this in my guide if you guys want to go check that out, linked in bio. My next point is that spiritual bypassing is keeping you stuck. You can't just pray away or overly demonize or overly moralize all the things that you are going through. Those things have their time and place, but when you're consistently doing that and ignoring all the physical and biological aspects of it, you are literally just bypassing and suppressing and reinforcing that cycle of fear and shame. And you're missing the bigger picture of healing. Prayer works as a seed, but you need to actively take steps in order to change, not just keep it up there in the spiritual realm. My next point that I learned is that awareness is not transformation. Awareness is the first step, and actually this is where most people get stuck. You're aware of your traumas, you intellectualize them, you're familiar with all the things that you need to let go of and all these things, but that is not what actually transforms you. It's action, which seems to be a reoccurring theme here. Next is your mind, body, and spirit are one ecosystem. You cannot heal your spirit while neglecting your body and ignoring your thoughts. Everything literally works together. My next thing that I learned is that rest is not a luxury, it is a necessity. True growth happens during rest, but not just that. Rest is actually your birthright. You need to be resting. Rest is a gift from God. And if you don't rest, you're gonna have severe consequences down the road. The next thing that I learned is that hobbies are more important than you think. Walk with God or your healing journey in general is not just ministry, church, prayer, scrolling, work, like all of these things that we get caught up in. Hobbies connect you to creativity, challenges, curiosity, and joy, which are all part of God's design. Hobbies should serve as a safe space where you can be yourself and actually embrace your passions, your quirks, your skills, your talents, without the pressure to be productive, without the pressure to monetize, without the pressure to be famous, without the pressure to, all those things. A lot of times, resting and hobbies and all those things feel even like a sin, but that's actually just the old conditioning, the fear and shame speaking, not God. So please find a way to play. It could be something for free, something that you gravitate towards, something that, you want to try or explore. The next thing that I learned is that you shouldn't make healing your whole identity. Learn to take breaks from healing, because life is not just about healing from trauma every single day. Not every day has to be a deep revelation of some kind of self-awareness you have about a trauma that you need to regulate and work through and integrate or whatever. You don't need to constantly be working on yourself. Take breaks, learn to play, go live life. The next thing that I learned is that I really feel like the whole point of this, the whole point of regulating your nervous system, the whole point of stepping into the promised land is to return back to childlike wonder. Jesus literally said that in order to see the kingdom of heaven, you must become like little children again. And you cannot be like little children again, which children are curious, they play, they challenge themselves, they have healthy discipline, they see the world as colorful and vibrant. You can't do all of those things if you're constantly in survival mode, or if you constantly have suppressed trauma and all those things. And lastly, I learned that healing is not about chasing this new version of yourself. It's about remembering who you are. Which sounds ironic because we're talking about becoming the new version of yourself or building a new identity and blah, blah. But the whole time is literally you in your essence. Before the world and trauma and sin and all of that took over. The point of healing is to finally feel safe to be authentically you at any given point, as long as you're not harming yourself or those around you. And whatever season you're going through, to be true to who you are.
Number one, I stop over explaining myself to people, especially if you're committed to misunderstanding me. Anyway, there's no point, because the brain does not understand it as you're trying to explain yourself. It understands it as insecurity, and it's going to store it. Silence is power. I don't sit around complainers, people who are negative, because energy is actually quite contagious. I stop checking my phone the second I wake up, because one, it's a terrible idea, but two, it spikes your cortisol, and that cortisol sets up your whole day. If my body is screaming no, I would never say yes, and I would know that my body is screaming no, because I will get bloated, because what essentially is happening is my body's dumping so much stress into my body. If my body's saying no, I'm not going, or I'm not going to hang out with. I do not allow anyone to project their fears into my life. Their limits is their destiny, not mine. I don't have limiting beliefs. It's really hard for type A personality, but I stopped multitasking. It's quite literally impossible to do, because it feels productive in the moment, but you can't get everything done at once. It's better to do one thing right than to do 100 things terribly. No matter what I want to accomplish, I don't push myself past exhaustion, because fatigue, according to neuroscience, is data, and your body will store it and remember it, and eventually you will have to rest. You might not rest in that moment, but one time you will rest. It might cost you a sickness. It might cost you for me, 3 years of being burnt out and I couldn't get out of bed, or depression, whatever it is, but your body will force you into rest at one point. So if you need to get your 8 hours of sleep, do it. This one, I'm so proud of myself that I've always done. I do not gossip, because it rewires your brain for insecurity and for fear. You become paranoid. When you're gossiping with someone, your subconscious is like, oh, they're gonna do it to you too. And so now you're insecure in that friendship. I would rather build real connections with people over business, money, conversations, happiness, anything great that's happening in life, the glimmers of gratitude of life, than gossip about another person. Last but not least, I understand neuroplasticity, so I don't doubt myself when I already have proof. For example, I wrote my book, How to Be a Fearless Networker, and I had to go back in and re-edit my dark romance that I just finished, and I was like, maybe I'm not a great writer, but that's a lie, because I have proof right in front of me. So now I always say to myself, once you have proof that you can do something once, then you can do it better a million times. So I no longer doubt myself as a writer. The last point, neuroscience taught me this: the brain becomes where you feed it. So I no longer feed mine junk. I don't watch true crime. I try not to watch anything bad, because it just stays there. You can't get it out of your brain. So
you're going to see a lot of videos on mindset, neuroscience, neuroplasticity, mind over matter, affirmations, manifestation, creating the life you want, etc. There are a lot of content creators who are sharing this information, thankfully, because these are literally the pillars and the foundation for changing your mindset and ultimately changing your life. I think that what I've realized in this journey, like this glow up journey, this self-transformation journey that I've been going through for the last decade, and even more so really deep diving into neuroscience and the brain over the last year, there are just some fundamentals that you need to understand to even get yourself off the ground and start working in the direction of creating the life you want. So I brought out the notepad today, and I'm going to teach you the 5 pillars, the 5 most important foundational things that you need to understand about neuroplasticity. And these are pillars and a foundation that we can start to build on. The first one is defining neuroplasticity and understanding what that is. Your brain isn't fixed. It can actually rewire itself. So every thought, every pattern, every belief, everything that makes you feel stuck, quote unquote, this is actually really freeing. And it's a good thing to know because your brain can actually create new neural pathways through any age in your life. So your brain is like a sponge. Throughout your life, no matter what you're going through, know that you are not fixed, right? So you are not stuck. You just have to figure out how to reprogram your brain. Thoughts create chemistry. So every single thought that you have creates a chemical reaction in your body. So positive thoughts release dopamine and serotonin. These are your feel-good hormones. This is something that is scientifically happening in your body depending on the type of thought that you're having. On the contrary, negative, fearful thoughts will release cortisol, and this is your stress hormone. So your mindset and the thoughts that you're thinking on a daily basis, the way that you're talking to yourself internally is actually changing the chemistry in your body. Your brain grows through repetition. So the more you repeat something, the more you internalize something and you believe it, the stronger the neural pathway is. So if you are constantly practicing negative self-talk and saying what you can't do and what you don't have and using words like need and want, very low vibrating words that do not help you to create anything, they just essentially strengthen the neural pathway to say, oh, this person is in constant need. This person is in constant want. When you're speaking negatively about yourself repeatedly, you are drilling into your subconscious, give me more of this negative experience. Because the subconscious does not know the difference between a positive and a negative. It only accepts the commands that you give it. This is why affirmations and journaling and retraining your brain and practicing repetition, EFT tapping, mirror work where you stand in front of the mirror and repeat your affirmations, because what you're doing is creating new positive neural pathways in your brain. Emotion drives memory and behavior. So the brain tags emotionally charged experiences as important, right? And this makes it stick in your brain. This is why shifting the way you emotionally interpret situations and things that happen to you is essential to changing your mindset. This is why when people talk about changing your perspective, literally you're changing the way that your body and your brain is associating with a certain event in your life. Fifth thing, and I think this is the most overlooked, is the fact that environment shapes your brain. This is why the content you consume, the people that you hang around, the way you structure your home, and even where you live, all of these factors will shape how your neural pathways are structured. So it's very important to surround yourself and make sure that your environment reflects where you want to go and not where you've been. So if you can just start having even the most minute understanding of these 5 things, you're already on your way to creating a new mindset, a new life, and changing everything you thought you knew about yourself.
As someone who studies neuroscience, I can look at someone and I can tell if they're about to get rich. I can tell when they're on the precipice of a lot of abundance, of a lot of wealth. You want to know the signs? Let's do it. Number 1, their language changes. They stop saying, I can't afford that. They start saying, how can I afford that? Meaning their prefrontal cortex has kicked in, which is your rich girl energy, your rich boy energy brain. Number 2, I noticed they become obsessed with growth. They're laser focused on growth, meaning they're not watching Netflix all night. They're not doom scrolling. They're not eating junk food. Instead, they're reading a plethora of books. They're learning about investments. That's how the rich uses. Number 3, they start to value their time over money. Neuroscience shows that your brain actually processes time scarcity faster than money scarcity. So when they start managing their time well, like when they start scheduling things rather quickly, I know they're about to get rich. Number 4, their nervous system starts to regulate a little faster, meaning they don't spiral after rejection or failure. Their vagus nerve is really, really calm, meaning they're not stuck in fight or flight mode. So they get a no and they're like, well, I'll try again. Number 5 is the most important. Their circle starts to change, Mirror neurons tells us in neuroscience that we act exactly like whoever we're around the most. So when they get better friends that are leveling up, they're going to level up as well. But if they're stuck with their riffraff and degenerate friends, guess what? Riffraff and degeneracy. But that's the first thing I noticed. I'm like, oh my God, they have new friends. Their friends are successful. You will be successful. Number 6, they stop oversharing. Whenever I see someone disappear from social media for a little bit, my brain doesn't go like, oh, what's happening in their life? I'm like, oh, they're working on something. They're working on something. Whenever you start to think rich, you tend to move in silence. We know that oversharing is the fastest way to kill your dreams. You work in silence and you pop out with the results. They start to take bigger risks. Our amygdala comes down when it normalizes uncertainty. Whenever I see someone start taking bigger risks, they just try something huge, I'm like, oh, they're on the precipice of it. I threw all my life savings at a retreat and also at my book. We're hoping for the best. Risk takers always become successful. Next, networking feels so natural. They start to network more. Let me tell you something, success is never solo. Next, they start to daydream a lot. You might call it maladaptive daydreaming. I call it visualization. Whenever I see someone close their eyes randomly and they can think about something, they can hold that visualization in their head. They're rehearsing that rich life before it happens. I know it's about to happen for them. Last but not least, they're done playing a victim. I loathe people with victim mentality. Broke people focus on problems. The rich focus on solutions. The moment they stop using those victim languages, why me? Oh, I can't do it. I know they're about to get rich. Money follows mindset, and neuroscience proved this.
Neuroscience just came out and said that in order to reduce your anxiety, and this is what they're telling people like in therapy, and they're teaching people how to cope with their anxiety by telling them that your brain can't handle anxiety and gratitude at the same time. And so whenever you're feeling anxious, you need to have gratitude. And guess what? The Bible's been saying that for 2,000 years. In the Bible, it says whenever you have anxiety, to 1, pray, and to 2, have thanksgiving. Imagine the Lord knowing what is best for us all along, and it taking 2,000 years for science to prove what he already said.
I'm a Christian studying psychology, and this is what I've learned. Your experiences, genetics, the way you think, your reaction, that is constantly reshaping your brain. That is called neuroplasticity. But the thing that has stuck out to me the most is how much trauma really does form your reality if you let it. There are words that you probably heard before, like trauma responses or triggers, even illnesses like PTSD. God formed our brain to be so powerful. You know this because the scripture literally says, as a man thinks, so is he. That's why it's so important to even surround yourself with people that you want to become. Someone could go through trauma like 20, 30 years ago, and their brain is still stuck in that reality. I have read numerous studies to show the power of prayer, the power of reading your word to reform the brain. The Bible literally says that we have the power to break generational curses. Trauma is seeds to plant generational curses in your bloodline. Go through trauma when you're younger. You become anxious, depressed. You might even have post-traumatic stress. It begins to impact how you parent. It begins to impact how you make decisions. Then you parent your children like that, and then they begin to experience that same trauma or similar trauma, and then it keeps going down the bloodline. All the devil has to do is shape one generation, and then that generation and the generations after will begin to do it on their own. Then that becomes culture. That is what happened to the Israelites. They had one generation that came out of slavery that they gave birth to a couple generations in the wilderness. Those generations were being formed by that slavery mindset that so many of those people didn't even enter the promised land. So if you have trauma that you haven't dealt with, taking it to the Lord, or even seeing a therapist, is something that you have to do, if not for yourself, but for the generations after you.
7 years of neuroscience and psychology in 60 seconds. Your brain believes what it repeats, not what's true. Thoughts create your feelings drive your actions, and your actions create your identity and personality. But identity is plastic. Your brain is constantly rewiring. So when you repeat something with enough intention and emotion, you can change your identity. Self-talk isn't harmless. It's like casting a spell. Your brain and body are listening all the time. So the more encouraging, helpful, useful your self-talk is, the stronger relationship you're going to have with yourself. Your life will always reflect who you believe yourself yourself to be, which is why you will never outperform your self-image. Your brain doesn't know the difference between what is real and what is imagined. When you visualize the person you want to be, how you want to act, how you want to talk, how you want to walk, you achieving your goals, you are rewiring your brain for success. You don't have thoughts, you get visited by them. And you don't have to believe every thought you think. You can't think your way out of a feeling, but you can feel your way into a new way of thinking. Unprocessed emotions stay stored in the nervous system. The body is always keeping score. About 95% of your behavior is automatic, run by the subconscious. Your brain is a prediction machine. It constantly guesses what's next based on old data. So if you can program that data, then you can change your future reality.
Things I would never do after learning the neuroscience behind self-love. Number 1, I will never talk poorly about myself, neither out loud or in my head, even if it's just for a second. How you speak to yourself forms your identity, and your identity creates your external reality, and the brain doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's not, so it doesn't know that you don't mean what you say. Number 2, I will never allow someone into my life who doesn't treat me the way that I deserve or desire simply because I like the person. When you accept this type of behavior from the people around you, you are accepting that how they treat you is truth to your self-worth. Even if right now you are someone that knows your worth and you think that because you know your worth, this won't happen, if you accept that behavior from others over time, this will start to shift your neural pathways from being someone who has high self-worth to someone who has low self-worth. Because you're exposing yourself to consistent behavior that speaks to low self-worth. Number 3, I will never look for validation in the opinions of others, even those closest to me. At the end of the day, you only have yourself. People you love, whether it's friendships, relationships, family members, can come and go at any point in time, but the only person that you will forever be in the presence of is yourself. What do I want out of life? What do I want to wear? Where do I want to live? What career do I want to partake in? What dish do I want to order for dinner? Because when all is said and done, the only peace and freedom that I feel from within is the peace and freedom that I created for myself by living my life the way I desired. And number 4, I will never place my value on the way that my body looks. Whether you want to believe it or not, beauty is energy, it is not physicality. When someone shows up in the emotional state of confidence and security, which are subconscious beliefs, they radiate more beauty and more attraction than the picture-perfect model sitting next to them who is miserable, insecure, and full of themselves.